G'day viewers, my name is Michael and welcome back to Single Racer. And today I want to do a discussion piece on a subject that took me by surprise while being on an online server. In fact, now this might sound over dramatic, but it actually shocked me because, to be honest, I'd never actually seen it before. And so if you can bear with me while we watch this old replay of mine on the Nordschleife servers, I want to explain what actually happened. And now for those of you that are my regular subscribers, I'm sure you'd know that I go on ad nauseum about racing on the online servers every night in Assetto Corsa. Now that's every night Australian time, of course. But I have to confess, it's almost like an addiction. People, I'm sure you've watched the news, and people on the news talk about how kids are addicted to their screens, and I must admit that ever since I got VR, the choice of watching either boring old TV or using the VR to race online, there's just no comparison. And especially now, because it's in Australia, it's our winter, and the headset does kind of warm up slightly. And so the fact that if I go into the computer room, shut the door, and between the computer warming up and the headset, I'm toasty warm. So I'm happy either way. But what I found really interesting was, in all my time on, because I normally do Nordschleife servers, sometimes Laguna Seca, and in all that time, I've actually only ever seen what you could consider two forms of racing. Now, to me, the reason I like the Nordschleife is I don't actually call it racing. There is a dedicated server that I do like to race on, and that's usually what's commonly known as the endurance form, where it takes the Nürburgring track and connects it up to the Nordschleife, and people do genuinely race usually in GT3 cars on that server. But essentially the Nordschleife server is more like a just out and out hot lapping thing, where other cars just are tending to get in your way, and or you can be casual about it and race them, but it's not true racing in its natural form. And so the good thing about that is you don't have what you might term the perceived pressure of a proper race, where you have to be right on it, and you run the risk of getting punted by other people if you're not at 100%. But the Nordschleife allows you to relax that little bit, and you can go for personal bests if you want, and I've done that a few times and done a few videos on that, but also lets you race at 70 to 80%. Now the second form of racing, or hot lapping more accurately, is a situation that happens where you get a group of people, or usually the alpha person, the alpha driver, who says to everyone else, would you like to go out in what I just jokingly refer to as a conga line, where you tend to get 5, 6, 7 cars and they all cruise. And this is why I deliberately picked this video playing behind me. Now this was a case that happened last year, and it was by a driver called Rubber Duck. So I named the video Rubber Ducky Conga Line, just for the fun of it. But it shows the 5, 6, 7 as people join or exit the line, and we cruise around. But the interesting part about this is we're still technically going at probably the lowest 70%, but maybe even as high as 80 to 90%. But in its true wording, it's probably more cruising than hot lapping. And so to sum up this side of it, they were the two major forms of hot lapping that I've ever seen on the Nordschleife, or on Nordschleife servers, which is, going out and out to try and break a personal best, and the more cruisy type, but still at a high level, chasing someone solely or being behind a whole group like in this video. And so now let me introduce this third thing that took me so much by surprise. And I'll show you here that if you go online, you have your typical 5 buttons on the left hand side here, and you would normally press the wheel just to race or hot lap, whatever your choice is on whatever track you're on. But if you go down to the 5th button while you're on a server, you'll see the list of drivers that is on the server, like the example here. Now, you might not be aware of this, but if you click on any of those drivers, and what I tend to do is click on the top 3, you can actually essentially hop into their car and watch them drive around and study their lap. You know, it's a good way to learn how they're approaching the actual racetrack if you are struggling with any particular corners. And so another way I use this technique, which is a personal choice, is that if you've ever seen the thing that comes up that says we want to kick XYZ driver off the server, and what I tend to do is, because someone can just be upset that they got punted off, so they do it out of spite. So what I do is I watch the driver a little bit to see if they're just a beginner or a bit of a noob and, you know, just aren't sure what they're doing. And in that case, of course, I just let it go. But if they are in fact deliberately kind of attacking other cars or blocking the track, then I know I can vote yes, because I've seen that and witnessed that myself. But on this particular occasion, I actually clicked on the driver because they were driving what I consider, if all other things are equal, the fastest car on the Nordschleife, which is generally the Zonda R. And they had a very slow time, but like I'm talking ridiculously slow, and was just curious why that was happening. And when I clicked on them, that's where I was so surprised, because they were just driving. And when I say just driving, I mean 60 k's like you drive on the road driving. And it was such a, I mean, I say surprise, but almost a shock to me, because I go, I've never seen that before, where a person takes a car out and just goes, you know what, I don't want to hot lap this car. I just want to drive it like a normal person on the road. And instantly it put the idea in my head that if you marry Assetto Corsa and VR, is that the best virtual car showroom possible? And when I say Assetto Corsa, I actually mean sim racing, but I say Assetto Corsa because in my mind, out of the 5 big games you could probably think of, Assetto Corsa has the most road cars of all other games. And so now let me show you an example of this virtual car showroom tour based around your financial position, or if you say one Tetslotto as an example. And so let's head over to the Nordschleife servers and check out some of these cars now. Okay folks, so here we are in the first scenario, and so just imagine that you either say are in a situation where you've got a good paying job, or you've won a low level Tetslotto type situation, one where you could afford to buy a new car or maybe even a second-hand car, but it's the lower tier kind of normal road car. Now I picked this particular car to start off with because this actually happened in that one of my favorite channels still, but it was a channel that I followed early on when I first started, was a channel called, or the person's name is Marcel Pfister, and he actually bought this car and he raves about this car, and this is only in the last 2 months. So I'm guessing that he probably bought it second hand, but you know, it could be totally brand new. But the advantage you have is that when you go in, this might seem like such a small thing, but when you go into the car, you can actually turn the headlights on and see how it actually looks with the lights on and how that affects the car. You can actually sort of check out the gauges and how it feels sitting in the car, and then actually take it out for a drive, a normal drive, just to see, even in a small sense, what it feels like, how it sounds, just the feeling that it gives you. You can push its limits and kind of get a feeling, do you like the way the car feels, if that's something you're interested in. Marcel Pfister has done a few videos where he's driving it on the road sort of at 3/4 pace, enough to give the wheels a bit of a squeal. So there's the option for you. Now, this is one model of a car, but if we go to, say, its arguable opposition, let's go into my favourite car. And so from a serious discussion point of view, this is a car that I would buy. And when I say that, I mean what I generally might term low-level touch lotto, where you could buy a new car, but it's a realistic, normal priced road car, but maybe just a bit more expensive than your normal sort of $20,000 car. And I would buy it based on how I feel it feels in the game. I absolutely love this car, and therefore would go to the showroom to do a final test. But the game and VR allows me to actually go inside and realistically have a feel like, do I like the dash? Now, I say this might be just such a little thing, but I have a personal dislike for red coloured lighting in the console and or on the dash, and it's I'm one of those that think just because you like a sports car doesn't mean you like the colour red, although you might like the colour red as the car but not the actual lights, which make it hard to read. So that is something to think about, is a little thing to say, well, I can actually switch the lights on and say, do I actually like the look of this? Does it feel nice? I can take it out on the road and see, does it suit my driving style? All these types of things that realistically with VR lets you have a great feel for the normal street car. And so here's the second possible scenario where you've won Touch Lotto, or you're in a great financial position and you think, well, rather than a, if we, for want of a better word, call it a bog standard road car, what if you want a luxury brand but can't afford a high-end luxury brand car? And you say, well, I'll go with something like this A1, something that's still affordable but has luxury and quality written all over it. So it presents you with two situations here where not only can you go in the car and say, well, I've never been in an Audi. How does it look? Okay, that looks very nice. And you can then turn the lights on. But see, here's an example where these are the type of red lights that I personally don't like. Now, I think this one looks nice, but on some of them, they're very hard to read. And you go, well, you can go, oh, gee, I don't like that. Or if it was me personally, I go, well, I don't particularly like the red on the controls, but I like the fact that it's nice and bright and white on the main dials, so that doesn't put me off. But there's one even more incredible situation here where you could take it into the actual showroom of the game and go through every proper legitimate colour of the car and go, you know what, I like this car, I'm going to buy it, I'm going to go to the showroom, but let me check out what colour I think I might like best. And it's just brilliant. It's just another way that you have access to genuine showroom colours. Okay folks, so now we get into another situation, which is rival cars. Imagine that you've won Touch Lotto, or you of course have the dream of winning Touch Lotto, and you go, you know what, my dream car is an M4, but I've never been in one. What's it actually like? So you have the potential to just, if I can find my keys, go in and have a look and look around. And now, if this was me, this is just a personal thing, but I go, oh gee, if that's what the lights look like, I don't know. And you look around, for such an expensive car, this is, in my opinion, a pretty dreary interior. You know what? I think I'll scrap this. Let let's head over to its opposition, Mercedes. And so here, folks, is arguably its opposition, but this is probably the next level up, the Mercedes AMG Black Series. And what a superb looking car this is, in my opinion. Absolutely beautiful. But if we go inside, it gives you the option to say, well, in my opinion, it's better than the BMW, but it's still quite plain for such an expensive car. I don't know. And there's those red lights on the controls that are very hard to read. I don't know why they do that. You've got the very clear or much clearer dial lights, but for some reason on the controls they go with this ugly red. I don't know why they do that, but that's just me. But another thing that the game allows you to do, especially in VR, you can do this without doing VR, but VR adds that next level. If I just find the F6 key, is I can even check out what the tyres look like on it and get a good look at the tyres and the rims and the brakes. This is what I mean. The game with VR lets you be your own virtual tour of any road car that happens to be in the game, and not just the Assetto Corsa. You know, the other games with whatever views they allow you. But it's just an incredible insight into some of the cars available. Now let's go to one more dream car, and then I'll move on to the last one. And so here's the final option, in the sense of, imagine that you've seen the movie Transformers, or a movie like Fast and the Furious that features these particular sporting cars, and you go, wow, I've always wondered what it's like to be in a Corvette Stingray. And the fact that with VR, the game lets you just climb in and go, oh man. Now, I've got to say personally, this is my sort of car. I really like the dash of this, and here we get to see the lights, and we even have that optional view. You know, you can look in the passenger side and look all around, but see, even the readout on the windscreen there, just that extra added bonus that you go, I didn't realize this car had that feature. Wow. And you know but you get a sense of how big the car is too. And you know, looking at the door handles and all these sort of things, what do the air vents look like? Everything just at your fingertips. It's quite amazing. So let's now go on to the final dream-like scenario, and we'll leave it at that. Okay folks, so as we wrap up, the story that I said at the start of the video, where the person was driving slowly on the Nordschleife servers, now that was in a Zonda R, but let me tell you this incredible true story here in Melbourne, Australia, where someone has won $5.5 million, but for the last 3 months no one has claimed it. No one has bothered to check, or forgot to check, or lost their ticket, and is still been unclaimed about 3 months later or something like that. So imagine you wanted to buy this dream car and you had the money to do so. So this is the Huari, I think it's pronounced BC. But as we go inside and you go, well, I just wonder what it's like to be in a dream car like this. And in VR, you can go in and go, oh man, what a car. Just incredible. Now, admittedly, it's got those horrible, hard to read red lights, but that's just my opinion. But I must admit, for red lights, the dash still looks incredible. Absolutely fantastic. And just for fun, let's go outside the car or have a look around the car, as we can have a close look at the dials. And as we find that view with the tyres, we can check out what the tyres look like. Quite incredible, absolutely fantastic mag wheels as well. And as we go back in the car, let me leave you now with the overall thing that you can use the game with VR to have a look at your normal road cars or absolute dream cars. The choice is yours, but I want to leave you with this one tip that if you like hot lapping, could make you a few tenths faster, maybe just a little bit faster, and it's a helpful tip. So let's move on to that final tip now. Okay folks, so here we are in a classic car on a classic road called Pacific Coast, done by Phoenix 77 over at the Phoenix Racing Channel. And you can check that out if that sounds interesting to you. But the final tip that I want to give you, apart from the fact that not only can you try road cars, dream cars and Tatslotto cars, but maybe even a few classic cars from the 60s, 70s, 80s and so on, that will just in VR will let you just check out what they look like and what they feel like. But here is a very strong tip. And as we go inside, my tip is, if you have a look here, I'm not in the right position. But I think everyone already knows, and again, this only applies to VR users, but my tip is the fact that you've always had access to, in Assetto Corsa's case, if I can find it here, but in other games, to move the seat position. But what my tip is when in the week that I got my VR, I actually went down to my car, the car I drive every day, my real road car, and I made the point of sitting in it and then understanding what the relationship was between my head, or more accurately my eyes, and the rest of the car. And what I found was, rather than just move the seat forward and back and up and down, VR is a subliminal thing anyway, where it blocks out the world and lets you feel like you're within the game. So in sim racing, that's the extreme, because you feel you're sitting in a real car. But what this does is, if you go to your real car and figure out where you naturally sit in your car, in that you are so used to that you do it every day or whenever you drive, if you suddenly then go back to the game in VR and move your seat, and in my case my eyes are 3/4 up to the windscreen, and then if I move back, suddenly there's this subliminal magic sweet spot that goes, oh, they're my arms. My brain is interpreting this as the extension of my real arms, and this feels so natural. And it has the potential to make you faster in hot lapping or racing, if that's your cup of tea. So now, as I say goodbye, rather than speed or do a hot lap, I'll test this car out as though I'm just driving, and in my case it'll be on the right side of the road for Australians. And I hope this was helpful, or at least made you think about the game from a different point of view and what it can offer. As I look out the window of my sports car driving down the road, looking at that fantastic air balloon, just cruising down the street, no pressure, no racing, no hot lapping, just enjoying a Sunday drive. This is Michael signing out for Single Racer. I'll catch you next time. See you later. Look at that.